Hello and welcome in. My voice is a little bit better than it was yesterday. I'm not going to push it too far. So hopefully by tomorrow, everything will be okay. Welcome in, guys. It is episode number 12 of Offensively Accurate. Joined here with Nick. You saw the title, Christian Nationalism is back. Plus, we're going to talk about some apathetic normies, as well as Nick brought forward his own subject to discuss too, which is going to be revolving around compassion from a secular viewpoint. And we're going to get into all these topics. But just to give you a nice opener into this, let me go ahead and share my screen here. I should have this ready to go. Well, either way, I'm going to pull it down here. So what we got here is we're going to be talking about this lady who essentially says that Christian nationalists believe, and that it's their belief, that rights come from God and not the government. And she found this quite appalling. Well, most people listening to that who are just, consider themselves, basic Christians go, I also think my rights come from God. Does that mean I'm a Christian nationalist? And so we'll get into that. Let me go ahead and make sure I can fix my screen over here and pull this back up over here. And then Nicholas, why don't you go ahead and introduce yourself, brother? Who are you? What do you do?
Yes, my name is Nick, longtime friend of Aaron. So currently right now I just got done with some full stack web development classes, so hoping to get a software engineering degree or job going here soon. Outside of that, I just work at a fintech company and just kind of grinding through the days.
Just grinding through the days. Well, brother, I appreciate you coming on. I know most people might they might be confused because we had some announcements about, I had some co-hosts leaving, and then, they get an announcement that the co-hosts are back, and they're like wondering, like, what's going on, like in and out, and I don't know. I'll let you explain it. What went down in that situation.
Yeah, so I was actually, just so everyone knows, I wasn't pressured into explaining my side. I definitely wanted to come forward. I had just recently gotten a talk from some close people to me that had mentioned that it might not be a good idea for me to pursue this just regarding, Atlas's social media profile. He has no fear on what he says, but it's not as if what he says is wrong. It's just more so that it's against societal norm, which is what we need today. It's something that held me back from coming back on the show. And, I'd reached out to him and I told him that I think it was best if he kept going without me. And I dropped out. And, for a couple months, I'd sat on it. At first, I thought I was making the best decision for myself because it felt like a career move right after being on a show like this, just considering I just got my degree. I felt like it might hold me back having anything political or just affiliations with anyone that might damage my my perception in the eyes of the public. So essentially, after a couple months, I reached back out to Aaron and I had watched a video that he had posted. Man, I wish I could remember the title of it. Actually, I think it was maybe it was the Matt Walsh one. I can't remember exactly, but I do know after I watched it, at the end, he had said something, and it was not directed at me. I know that. But when I heard it, I was at first offended. And that's how I knew it was the right thing to say. Because if I wasn't offended, it wouldn't have made me want to act the way I did. So when I heard it, it was along the lines of, and I'm paraphrasing, but you don't be someone that's too afraid to say what they want, because change is what we need in this world. And if you're not trying to change the world you live in and you're giving up, you're only damaging yourself and the ones you love. And that's something that really spoke to me. And I just realized, yeah, I think I'd rather stay at a job that isn't paying me an insane amount of money, if that even plays a factor in that potential role for me. But I just I'm sorry to ramble,
Oh, you're
but
good,
I
buddy.
just wanted to say that, yeah, I just wanted to say, it spoke to me, and I'm glad to be back on. And when I reached out to Aaron, he was extremely, extremely generous and like thankful and heard me out and was just incredibly nice. I mean, I wasn't expecting it. Not to say that it's not in his character, just more so how I had left just felt like it felt wrong, and I felt like had you been more upset at me, I would have understood, and that's what I was expecting. But I reached out regardless.
No, yeah. I mean, and I'm glad that you came back on. I was never gonna be like, no, you can't come back on. That was never even my thought
Yeah,
process. I mean, from my perspective, it did feel kind of out of nowhere. But then I was also wondering, I'm like,
it
did
was.
I go too far on one of my tweets? Like, did I push something too far? And I'm like, possible. And I'm like, at the same time, I get it. And it's like, I understand too. Like, I'm not going to hold myself back. So I understand when your parents come in and they're like, hey, this dude's kind of pushing the line here. Like, you might want to really think if you want to be associated with this dude. So I don't blame you for having that perspective and having that stance because, who am I to convince people, especially when it's like, we're not making loads of money here right now. So, who am I to expect you to throw away something you've been working on or expecting to throw away, just to help me on it and push Christianity. But I went the route where I was like, I understand it. I wanted to kind of leave you with a message of like, I hope like, I'm not against you. I'm not holding anything against you. This doesn't change our friendship. But I was more so like, I just want to leave you with this. Like, I want you to know, like, I don't think this is the right decision for our future moving forward. And I hope that's kind of what I got across. And it sounds like one of my videos you were watching where I was kind of saying the similar thing kind of spoke exactly that to you again. And so I'm glad because it's to me, it felt
Yeah, I mean
appreciative of
it.
like, my message was getting across, even if it's to just my friends, like it was like, it got across to somebody. And so I'm thankful for that.
Exactly. And I don't want to spend too much time on it, but it really was it spoke to me a lot. And that's also how I know outside of just that, you're a good friend to me, that you are getting better at this. You are really perfecting your speaker ability and the impact that you can make.
Man, it'd be easier if I didn't lose
That's
my voice. I
yeah, I don't
appreciate that.
feel as impacted by you right now.
Yeah, no, right? I mean, yeah. What's funny is Donnie on the last show was saying like, "Hey, well, listen, like, I get to be the one with the golden voice, and you get to be the one that feels like you don't have the best one." And I'm like, "That's fair. I'm never in that position." But
Hmm.
man, I mean, and I think that's nice, and that's going to tie in nicely too when we get to talking about apathetic normies when we get further into this. So, without
Yes.
further ado, let me go ahead and do the calls to action because I'm terrible at these. I have to put a reminder for myself to do these. Subscribe to us on YouTube. I did have one single announcement with that on YouTube. Me and Donnie discussed this yesterday off air. We think, in terms to boost our discoverability as much as humanly possible, we're going to honestly stream intermittently. So I'm going to probably stream one day on X, one day on YouTube. I mean, YouTube's eventually probably going to like nick me for something. I've already got a couple strikes on YouTube. I mean, if I get another one, I'm going to lose my streaming ability for a couple months, I think, maybe a couple weeks. So we'll see what happens. I'm just not sure because I'm not too keen on committing into following all of the big tech oligarch rules. So we'll see that when we get there. Um, Follow me on X, follow me on Spotify, and share the show if you enjoy it. Especially if you, or even if you hate it, right? Like if you think I'm the most ridiculous person you've ever heard speaking, like please share this with your friends so we can, they can, dump on me too. I would like these ideas to get further pushed out there and engaged with. I enjoy the sparring, but I always say this too. Like I'm genuinely in the belief that I'm right and you're wrong. So like the burden's upon you, to kind of push back against that. And so I kind of carry that energy. But we already went ahead
Oh,
and we
and
said
that's why I'm back.
exactly. And that's why we need the opposition, right? Like, and for those who haven't followed along the entire time, I'm on the right hand side. I'm on the right wing, where Nick would probably find himself saying he's definitely more center leading, if not even leftward or liberal. But we both share the creed that we both are Christians, right? So we both believe in Jesus Christ. We both believe that this is the way, like this is the truth. And so with that binding us, we kind of use these hours and these discussions to kind of see where we disagree at, what are the nuances, and we're going to go through some of these topics that are current news and local events for you guys to hear our opinions too. So with all that out of the way, let me go ahead and go back to the opening headline. You see it here on screen that I haven't pulled up. It's from 9mm SMG. He says, hard to argue. Now this clip went viral not too long ago. This is February 28th on this. And so I'm sure you can see it on screen here, Nick. I'm going to make sure the volume is okay. It's only 20 seconds long, but just go ahead and listen to this because I don't think you're going to disagree with what she says, Nick. But what she's saying is Christian nationalism.
The one thing that unites all of them, because there's many different groups orbiting Trump, but the thing that unites them as Christian nationalists, not Christians, by the way, because Christian nationalists is very different, is that they believe that our rights as Americans, as all human beings, don't come from any earthly authority. They don't come from Congress. They don't come from the Supreme Court. They come from God.
So what's funny about this is it got quote tweeted, to here and back, and everybody was like, well, I guess that makes me a Christian nationalist then, because I definitely believe that my rights come from God. So go ahead and give me your opinion, Nick. I know it's only a 20-second video, but what do you think of that?
Yeah, actually, I remember watching it before, and my first thought was, I wouldn't say that my politics line up with Christian nationalism. I would say that my politics are pretty, I would say, not far away from Christian. It's more so my beliefs are Christian, but I don't politically stand on some things, but I still consider God in it. It's weird.
So you keep them, more separate than what most people, or what I would keep them as, right? Like you keep the religion and government separate. I guess more so, do you think that your rights come from God? Because I do.
Can you elaborate on that?
Like your God-given natural rights, like your freedom to express yourself, the freedom to defend yourself, the freedom to exist as a free entity. Like, who do you think gives you that right? Do you think it's because a man or a king or a monarch or Joe Biden says it so? Or do you believe it exists naturally, whether the government's here or not? Do you believe Go ahead, my bad.
Oh, you're fine. I was going to say, it's kind of tough because I would say, personally, it feels like that's more so an individual right. And I feel like you kind of create your own rights. Now, as if you haven't been following along and you haven't heard me before, I'm still very much a newbie into Christianity. I have been a Christian for a year, but I just recently started listening to, so my dad brought me onto this. It's a podcast streamed. It's called Bible in a Year, and it is the Catholic Bible.
Okay.
But it's still interesting. It's still the Bible.
That's going to be more Christian nationalist than you like if it's Catholic.
I know, yeah, and I'm prepared to be offended by what I hear. That's never stopped me before.
Okay. Well, so have you gotten into it, is what you're saying? Have you started this?
Yeah, so it's Bible in a Year. It's supposed to be each day you listen to about 20 minutes, and essentially 10 minutes of it, give or take, is spent describing or reading straight from the Bible. It starts in Genesis, so that's where I'm at.
Interesting.
Yeah, so he reads it text for text, and then after breaks down everything, because when you hear firmament 20 times in a row, you're like, I don't know what's going on here.
That's fair. Okay, you said it's Bible in a Year. Let me put it on screen for people. Bible in a Year.
Yeah. Bible in a Year.
Oh
yeah, sorry, I should have put a link in there.
I see it.
Yeah, Mike Schmidt.
What does FR mean? Am I retarded?
Father.
Father. Why? I've never seen it. I've never seen it. Like,
I
showed
haven't
like
either.
that.
I actually just deduced that. I could be totally wrong.
Oh, probably because they refer to him as Father Mike Schmitz. That makes more sense.
Y-
I'm not Catholic, so I'll say that. That probably makes sense why I don't understand that. Well, for everybody
You know, and
interested,
neither
that's
is
a
my
great
dad.
idea. Really,
My
what denomination does your dad fall under? What would you say? Protestant, I would imagine. Evangelical.
Protestant.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Which makes sense. I think most default Christians who don't even think about denomination generally probably fall under Protestant.
Yeah, it's the most free willing of them all, really. You know, it's like it doesn't have, even though it kind of is. The churches are more so about, if you want to be a devout believer, this is the rules and guidelines you follow. But they're also more forgiving, and they're not going to tell someone that doesn't follow those exact rules that they can't go to church, you know?
Right. Well, I was just seeing the part where you said that they do the 10 minutes of explaining and the 10 minutes of actually reading it. Like, I think that would be a huge sell for most people, because I don't think most people want to, do like 30 minutes of straight listening to somebody read the Bible, especially when there is just like so much that goes on. There are a lot of larger concepts. There's like a lot of big words, large names. So it makes it a bit easier if you have, somebody go through it for you and with you and explain it with a 10-minute split. That's a really good idea. I'm glad that you brought that up, actually. I'm glad I was able to shout that out.
Yeah, it's been good so far. Day 3, and I don't feel like I hate myself yet, which I was expecting, just it being the Catholic version. So,
Well, okay. So before we get into this next topic, let me ask you this. It'll be the last final one on this podcast. Do you think that like you find it to be like an obligation to get involved in the word? Because I'll be honest, like there's sometimes when I'm like, I wake up, I'm like, oh dude, I gotta do the verse of the day. But then I hate that I think about it like that, because then I'm like, I'm looking at it as an obligation rather than like I'm desiring to do that. So I don't know, maybe you feel
yeah,
do the same.
actually, I would love to speak on this because this is something funny enough. I believe it was day 3 in the Bible in a year. I just did 3 back to back because I just was interested. But for the day 3, I just started this the other day. So this is like brand new to me.
Okay.
But what he talks about actually is how when you, oh man, it's the Bible names are bad for me. I can't remember it exactly.
Like the names of the
But it
books
was
and the people.
essentially, I think it might have been about Abel and how Abel had put God first every day. And it was the story, how
Yeah.
Cain and Abel both brought him a gift. And then why did he treat Abel better? It was essentially like he was saying how Abel, instead of giving God a gift, that was just something he found, which is what they kind of infer with Cain.
Yeah.
He said that Abel brought him a gift that was like, obviously God was the first thought on his mind when he woke up. And so he's like, so that's the kind of love and attention you should give God. It's like,
Yeah.
when you wake up in the morning, it's not as so much as your first thought should be God, but what you are giving God should be your number one priority. And so I think that even if you feel like it's an obligation, that kind of stress and feeling like it's a necessity, I think that's a good thing. I think it's actually that's proving that even though you might not want to do it,
Yeah.
you're giving God your first part of your day because he is that important to you.
And it's wild that we're talking about this because it's all connected, dude. It's just crazy how it shows like when God really is trying to put something on your mind, he'll use whatever, literally whatever. Because I talked on the phone with Wayne last night, and for those who aren't familiar, Wayne was our first ever guest on this podcast. Wayne is a man who got really popular regionally because he's a man who runs with the cross. I mean, he literally I'm not even joking you, this big fat wooden cross, dude. It looks like it was made in the 1930s. And he runs about, I think it's like 6 or 7 miles, like every single day, all around this town. And he carries his cross. And he had a great story to go along with that. So if you haven't listened to that, I do encourage you to go listen. I believe that's episode number 3, The Man Who Runs with the Cross. And he's a minister, a pastor, vice versa. I'm not sure which one he prefers. And he started his own church. Well, I called him because I'm trying to get details of, to come on the show for the next time, because he's coming back, I believe it might be this Sunday or next Sunday. And he was talking about how, when it comes to making all of these priorities, he even feels like sometimes like it's an obligation, and he hates feeling that way, because it should be, it's a matter of like, you wouldn't be okay if your wife came to you and said, hey, like, honey, I love you, but like, I'm only going to give you 90% the rest of my life. And you would be like, oh, what's that? Like, that's a bad deal on me. Like I want 100%, right? And so it's viewing that fact that, your relationship with Jesus and God is very akin to the same exact thing, if not more so, taking priority over the relationship you should have with your wife. And so it makes sense, even if you want to push it to the 99 percentile, like, he's still going to want that 1%, like he wants you to give the 100%. He wants you to give every ounce of your willpower in direction and forward facing, heart on your sleeve. He wants to be that person in your life. And so like, that's why I always got to think so too, like, even in the good moments, man, you got to make sure that you are grateful for the things that he has provided for you. It can't be, the one-sided, you only pray when things get bad kind of ordeal. But alas, we're getting off into a tangent. I want to actually tie it back into what we have the outline about. So with that being said, I'm sure you followed this story, Nicholas, or at least you had seen this tweet. So on screen I have here, and I have another picture I can pull on screen to share for everybody, is Dylan Brewer once again. I know I've been hitting this like a nail to a hammer, or a hammer to a nail, I should say. But Dylan Brewer was charged in the state of Florida for a felony for burning out. I believe it was just one pass. If I'm wrong, correct me, but literally was just one pass. And he is being charged with a felony for a felony vandalism charge. It was destruction of property. And he's facing up to like $17,000. And so I've been nailing this like crazy, because Dylan Brewer actually liked one of my tweets not too long ago, one of the clips I had made. And so I reached out to him because I was like, I would love to have Dylan Brewer on the show to talk with him. But he came back to me and he had said, no, it's essentially all off the table until this gets resolved. And so I was like, okay, but what can I do to help? And he was like, well, one, obviously, donate. But the other thing too was to get this in front of Ron DeSantis. And even to this day, I have not seen Ron DeSantis say one thing about this instance going on. And to me, I just find it to be insane. I just find it like a felony for that is ridiculous. I can see a fine. I can see like a slap on the wrist. I can even see some kind of misdemeanor reckless charge. But what I cannot see is a felony for doing this. And you could see this picture here. It's already been faded. If you see it on screen, like everywhere, on all sides from the road traffic it's been on, it's already faded. And so for them to go to the length that one car going a bit harder, as if like semis over time don't do more damage to that, and giving them a felony is like, I mean, it's clown world, dude. I view it as clown world. And so, I mean, I know you come from it from a different perspective, Nick. So what did you think about this situation?
Yeah, actually, so when I first saw this, of course, my first thought is I can't just take it at face value. I gotta like do some more research about it. So I looked at a few different places. I even went to the New York Post. I'm sure you love them as a media source.
They were good with the Hunter Biden story. I don't know what happened to him lately, but go ahead, my bad.
Yeah, no problem. So yeah, I checked the New York Post. They actually said that it was multiple burnouts.
Was it multiple
I didn't
burnouts?
feel
okay.
That's what they said. They didn't give a number, but they said it was multiple burnouts.
It's possible. I only saw a video with one, but it's possible.
Yeah. So apparently it was witnesses. Just for an exact quote, witnesses reported that Brewer was observed intentionally performing multiple burnouts with his vehicle over the LGBTQ Pride crosswalk. The Delray Beach Police Department said in a statement on Monday. So that's just what they had said. But my first thought when I saw this was, yeah, I mean, he sounds just as stupid as every other 19-year-old I've ever met. It doesn't forgive every crime you do. And
right.
Obviously my viewpoint on it is like, no, I don't think that the LGBTQ is worth attacking. I don't think it's something you need to do. And if you feel like you have a viewpoint against them, that is not the way that you show that. That's now, and I get it because he is 19 and he wasn't trying to do any harm to anyone. He just made a stupid mistake. And I did also read how they said that they thought it might lead to it being charged as a hate crime. I'm not sure if that's what you were talking about, the felony being.
Yeah,
But
well, I'm sure
it was,
they will. I'm sure they will attach a hate crime charge to this. I mean, why wouldn't
yeah,
they?
it's just not a hate crime.
But I mean,
Defacing murals. I mean, it's like that happens so often. I mean, before all of the racial and sexual orientation. You know, essentially like I don't want to say riots, but an activist. Before all of that, you had people like at PETA that would go up and throw paint on people, and they'd be charged, but it's not like it was a felony. But it's like that's assault, and now if you throw paint on.
Well, I can see a felony charge for someone throwing paint on a person more so than I can see someone burning out on the street.
Well, yeah, and I'm not exactly, I can't recant every time that's happened and what their charges were.
Right.
But I don't remember that ever amounting to much. But to charge him for a hate crime just seems ridiculous. But I will say that if he went to jail for a little bit, took a fine, I'd understand. I mean, that's kind of how you learn. I don't think the police department should let him go. At least shouldn't just slap him on the wrist, because what he did was unacceptable, and he's got to understand that there are reasons that you can't just go do this, and other people that may feel the same way as him but are more matured, this makes them look worse, and they can't really put that standpoint that because now they want to defend him because they know he feels the same way, but then they're like, are you defending like some vandalizing? It's are you like defending someone who's breaking the law and saying way to go? It's tough to say. But I'd like to hear more of your standpoint on it.
Well, listen, I'm gonna say I disagree on a lot of different things with what you had said. But I wanted to take it to Sovereign Brawl because he's one of the more popular accounts that's in this Christian nationalism movement. Because he was the one who I even got my attention taken to from it. I wish I would have had some of these more bookmarked here. I'll go and scroll down and see if I can't find them. But the one thing that I definitely disagree with is the fact that he shouldn't, that he made some kind of grave mistake. I mean, me and you both can sit here and know, if a bunch of lesbians just walked out into the street, started lighting American flags on fire, I guarantee I'd watch as the cops just went and looked at him, and then they look away because they're like, no, okay. But to think that, like, this is the point what I mean by, like, the two tiers of justice. Like, if it was a mural of an American flag on the ground and it was a bunch of, like, drag queen homos who went out there and started, like, rolling all over it with paint or some garbage, they wouldn't be getting charged with felonies at all. And I don't expect that whatsoever. I think this is an entirely politically motivated issue. I would be okay with them getting a fine, reckless driving. Like, I'm okay with that because you shouldn't be burning out in a tiny intersection in the street like that too. But I come from it from the viewpoint of like, if I was 19 years old, I can easily see myself doing something like that. Especially, even at 19, you're 1 year into being an adult, but you're still dumb, right? Especially for men, like your brain's not fully developed. And I don't view it as anything more so than civil disobedience. I view it as essentially him being like, no, like I'm not going to kiss the ring of the LGBTQ crowd. I'm not going to bend the knee. And if anything, like, why isn't the American flag mural painted on the ground? Why is the city paying to install this state property? And, because they would have to charge them for damages. So why is the city getting behind some extremely ideological flag that has ties to advancing pedophilia as well as having ties to mutilating children, I don't think that the state has any reason to defend that whatsoever. And in fact, it shouldn't be housed at all. Do I think that you should be violent towards people? No. But I don't think, you would even admit it yourself, like, he wasn't attacking anybody. Now, I view that as akin to very similar in the light in the same way that they do when they go to those murals, those, the stop oil activists. And those ones, albeit, those ones are actually destroying hard work paintings. But I also come from the viewpoint of, I view this as right versus wrong, not what's legal or illegal. And like, I don't view what the current justice system and the way it's been behaving in the last 10 to 20 years as being legitimate. I just simply don't. I think regionally, depending on where you live, is going to determine how your court case goes. And so with that being said, I'm kind of leaning, because it's happening in Florida, they probably will honestly get rid of the felony charge and maybe give them a misdemeanor. But with that being said, go ahead, my bad. I talked for a bit.
Yeah. No, you're fine. I wanted to pose a question to you. If it were essentially, let's just say, the American flag painted on there, and a gay person had done that exact very same thing.
Yeah.
I mean, would you, like, and I want you to answer honestly, it's like, could you actually be defending that same exact person, saying they don't deserve a felony charge? Or would you sit back and be like,
yeah.
It's that? And I think I think it's hard for a lot of people from like someone that's, obviously agrees with LGBTQ. It's like, how could they look at that and be like, man, that's wrong that that guy's getting a felony? Instead they look at it like you would, or anyone else would on the other side, and be like, this guy's an idiot, and that's kind of what you get. And I think that's the standpoint that needs to change. And that's why I feel like we have to acknowledge that what he did was wrong. And not that he deserves anything worse than just, regular fines, but it's just, I guess I worry about it just repeating. And I think that it's like, people don't understand that when you start thinking that something like this is okay, then when the other side does it, you punish them. I mean, you're blatantly, you had the American flag on there too, huh?
Yeah, that's why I was when I pull it on screen. That's what I saw the video, and it looks like he leaves the scene. Like, I think it was only one time. I would imagine if he did it multiple times, this street footage would be a lot longer. But again, maybe Sovereign Broad clipped it. I just have it on screen because I just like, I don't think this is like, and I'll answer that question honestly. Like, no, I don't think, even if a homo, went and did it to an American flag, I don't think they should be charged with a felony for it. I mean, do I like it? No. But even Donnie was on the show and we had discussed this when I had him on. Like, you have the right, to essentially do whatever you want to the American flag, in the right of your own home. Now, do I like that? No. But that's also by proxy of the fact that I'm really not libertarian, man. Like, I am Christian nationalist. But as it sits right now, like, the law says, like, you can do whatever you want to your property. But again, the issue being here, though, is like, this isn't any individual's property. The state is assuming ownership of this as its property. So again, if it was the American flag on the ground and you deface an American flag on a government building, I would view that as a much greater insult than someone who would have abused the rainbow pride flag on a government building. Because I don't view the pride flag as having any reason to existing or being on or anywhere near the state building. Because I have not seen anywhere or voted on anything that has, said or pushed this notion that the LGBTQ has somehow, is being widely accepted as like the creed or law of the American people. But with every institution, it's bending its will. And we see that with Christian churches. There will be churches that fly the pride flag before they fly the American flag. And to me, it's a sign, it's a virtue signal. It's a sign of like, you put that sign in your window because you don't want the mafia to come by. You tip your nod to your hat to them Because if you don't, you know what these activists might end up coming and doing. Especially given
and use it to gentrify your neighborhood.
well, I'm saying with like the COVID riots, when the George Floyd riots, right? Like, and with the Antifa stuff, like those people were smashing no matter what it was, and people were just coming out and begging, doing whatever they could to virtue signal and be like, please, like, no, I also think everyone's racist. Just please don't destroy my home and kill my family. I mean, they weren't going so far to actually like pulling people out and killing them, but there was many instances that caused people to brandish weapons inside of their homes because these people operate inside of the network and framework with Antifa as well. So I just view this as a very politically motivated thing. Like, I think, again, I agree with the fact that he should get some kind of charge. Like, it's not okay to do reckless stuff, but I don't think the charge should be because he destroyed any of the mural. It should be because he recklessly burned out in the middle of an intersection.
Yeah, and I get what you're saying. I was like, I don't think it should be a felony, and I don't believe it's even remotely. I wouldn't consider it a hate crime either. I just think that it should be charged as it is, without a felony, and that if it happens towards any political affiliation or anything like that, it should be charged the exact same. I don't understand why, how in the American justice system you can say that whether this was the American flag or the pride flag, that it would be different, or maybe a BLM mural. It's like, either way, they disagree with the group and they're defacing that, and he should be charged for it. So that's really how it should be, but it should be that way across the board.
This is
if
why,
you're not, if it's not, yeah.
Well, I was going to say, this is why I hard disagree, because like your premise here is libertarian values, which I once used to agree with. I can't honestly give my position better than what Sovereign Bra says from this paragraph on downward. My friends and I all would have done the exact same thing when we were his age. That flag is an abomination and 100% deserves to be thoroughly disrespected with burnt rubber. I don't want to see his life destroyed by this absurd felony charge, so I've attached a link to his legal fundraiser in the next tweet. Consider chipping in a few bucks. Do not let Globo Homo take this win over our boy. Because that's the level that I'm at. I don't view it as like we need to honor these people's rights. I view it as like this organization, this movement, has been continually advancing its agenda to continually force all of its, whether it's the influences on children, whether it's the masculization of women, whether it's the effemination of men, whether it's convincing people to get irreversible sex change surgeries, all of it, dude. Every single ounce of it is an absolute abomination in the eye of God. And I think anything less than that, any less recognition of that, is honestly just like, is dishonest, in my opinion. I can understand viewing it from the perspective of the American way, which is we want to respect people's rights. But it's gotten to the point where these people are just in such an antithetical movement, such an opposition to what we do. And I call them outright evil. I think most of what they do partakes in a large amount of sin with zero repentance, and then demanding tolerance from us, from everyone else who's watching in. I cannot, stress enough that like, I think that any and all amount of this current pride movement it must go. There's nothing but positive externalities to be had if we can shrink the amount of influence of the pride movement.
Yeah, and I think that it's like this is the whole point of what I'm trying to say. It is totally fair, and you're right to say what you're saying, and that's kind of where I come from the standpoint from. It's like, it doesn't matter whether I agree with the LGBTQ community or not, but I do think as an American, it's their right to say what they want to. And like, if they're making changes in politics, they're doing it the American way by voting and by reaching out to their their city halls and their mayors, and they're getting these changes done. Now, whether or not it's, oh, if you don't do this, then you're automatically anti-LGBTQ, which I imagine most mayors and politicians feel. It's like, if you aren't 100% for it, then you're 100% against it.
Right.
And people could probably listen to me right now and make their own judgment call about it, but you'd be wrong. I, even as a Christian, I think that it's entirely your decision. And I think that's your God-given right, is that it is your decision to choose what route you want to go. And what you have to find God yourself. And people that reach out to you are going to reach out to you not because they hate you or want you to change because everything you stand for is wrong. You have to understand that if a Christian person's reaching out to you, it's because they want to save you, because they love you. And if you disagree, then you can politely say it. But if you come from a standpoint where you virtue signal and you act like this is what's kind and this is justice, but then you act like a bigot and tell people like Aaron or anyone else that disobeying it means you're evil and we should cancel you, which we'll get into later. That's inherently wrong. And I mean, it's funny that the word bigot doesn't get used anymore, because most of the political standpoints now are all about snubbing out the opposing view.
Right.
I mean, that's where I come from. That's my standpoint on it.
No, I agree. Like, especially as a Christian, like if you're not making sure that your message is palatable to the person that's going to be receiving it, then like, what's the point of even speaking? And that's also not to say like, make yourself sound PC. That's to make sure that like what you're saying is like you're confident that that's exactly what you mean when you say what you say. It's no amount of like, kind of hesitating and it's like, no, like if you believe what you know to be right and true is true and you are in the word of God, you have to you have to go forward and speak that unashamedly and boldly, and I view this as one of these things where it's just like, it's such a public example of sin. It's so out there. It's like, why is this even a topic? Why is this, who brought the felony charges on this kid? Right. It's just one of those things that's so like, what the heck? That it's like, I find it hard not to have such a harsh anti-stance against it, where it's like, dude, what kind of clown world do we live in? And then again, like this goes back to the fact that most people are trying to, subvert Christianity by telling them to be tolerant and abandon the message of repentance. Don't tell people to repent. That's, you're going to drive people away. And it's just like, I don't, what's the point of even bringing Christianity to somebody if you're going to only give them half of the word? It's just one of those things where it's like, it's pointless, man. Like if you want to be buddy with a gay person with no idea or no actual agenda to kind of see the error of their ways and turn them towards Christ, then I don't view any ounce of personal interaction with that person to be of value, right? In fact, you're kind of subverting yourself. You other Christians see the way that you do that and they're like, oh, look, like this guy didn't confront that guy on his sin and he's around that dude all the time. And so we've kind of bled into this nature of the fact that, as Christians, we have this very tolerant and like, oh, okay, like go be kind. And like, I think that's just so, it's damaged Christianity so badly. And I say that, and it honestly brings up a really great point. I want to go back to a video I actually had that summarizes this really well, because this was from James, or no, is it Kirk Cameron? I believe his name is Kirk Cameron. Yes.
I'm not sure.
I got it right here. Oh, wow.
So what I'll say, just to fill the air while you're looking for it.
Yeah,
so and big surprise, I disagree with you, but not fully. So what I do disagree with is that I don't think that the openness has ruined Christianity. I think that's exactly why we have as many believers as we do now. And I think that right now it's just kind of getting publicly shamed. I'll let you play this video though real quick.
I'm not sure if I have found it or not yet.
Okay.
I think
So-
the person I had originally found it from, I had bookmarked it from, locked their account for some reason.
Oh,
Yeah,
interesting.
I know. You can go on with your point. I'm still trying to find this.
No problem. So what I was saying though is that I don't think it's wrong. I think that it is why people believe like they do now. And I think that you do have to have an objective with the people you're close with, as in you're making sure they understand that like you can't be trying to change me from my ways. And even though I am trying to change you, that it comes from a place of love. And it's more so you'll hear me out. I think it's more understandable when you try to tell someone there's an objective when you try to pull someone towards Christianity or religion in general. And it's like, I want to save you. But from the other side, what can you truly say is your reason for pulling someone from Christ?
Well, listen.
You know, what's
Well, that's why I'm trying to find this beautiful clip, because it can't really say it much better than this, dude. It's
it's
crazy. This account is locked, and I don't think anybody else has the clip. That's gonna be really
can you
upsetting.
paraphrase it?
I mean, really, it literally was exactly what I had just said, which is that, you know, the first two commandments, are to love the Lord with all of your heart and to love your neighbor. But he doesn't view turning the other cheek as loving your neighbor. You know, if you wanted to truly love your neighbor, why wouldn't you want them to join heaven with you? It's this weird idea that these people can continually live these lifestyles and they'll make it to heaven, and that you have no burden as the Christian to carry your cross and be like, hey, dude, like, you're not supposed to live like this. You know, it's exactly the same as the woman at the well. Like, he goes and he says, go and sin no more. So if that's what Jesus said, how did the message change? You know what I'm saying? Like, where did it get altered at? From going, okay, as long as you're happy, right? Like, that's not what the message was. It was go and sin no more.
Yes. But also, I think that it takes time for people to change. It takes 10 years sometimes. A lot of times, like every 10 years, the person you were 10 years ago is not who you are today. So you have to think that giving up on someone so quickly, expecting them never to change. I mean, imagine how if you now it comes from a standpoint for me. I know you grew up Christian, but my family was not until I think my dad was 40 at the time he became religious, and before that he was atheist. He didn't preach atheism. He just never really mentioned religion with us. And if we wanted to go to church, we were allowed to go to church. It was just his belief. So I didn't really accept him until like a year ago. And I think about, well, what if someone had just viewed me in that same light? Like, well, he's going to continue to sin, and I'm never going to be able to change him, and he's just going to continue to be in his ways. And that's like, I think about that, and I'm like, man, I wouldn't have been saved. Same thing with my dad. Same thing with most people I know. Is that if someone didn't take the time to work through and truly change someone, you would never know. Many people would be left without Christ.
Well, listen, I think I found it, actually. I think I found it on these guys' stream.
Excellent.
Let me go ahead and play this. Make sure the volume's okay. It looks like they're reacting to it as well.
Reads the news and he pays attention to things, and he invites a lot of these like left-wing activists and stuff on his show to talk about their ideas, and they say no, because when you hear them talk, then people can tell that they're crazy. So they just won't go on his show. So that you can only get people like Kirk Cameron and people that are on the center and on the right to go on his show. because the left
Okay,
people
cool.
won't do it.
We'll try this. I don't know if it'll work. We'll see what happens.
Oh,
It's fascinating for you to listen to you guys, and thank you for just breaking this down so that we can.
You hearing it all right?
Yeah,
Keep going.
sounds
Let it
great.
go.
Can you hear Nick?
Yeah,
all
Okay.
great.
have a better
Yeah.
understanding of this. My understanding of people who are being tolerant, turning the other cheek, is I see so many who are just tolerating evil, and that's not loving your neighbor. I mean, at the end of the day, the two great commandments of Christianity are to love God with all of your heart, mind, soul, and strength. And the second is like it, is to love your neighbor as yourself. If you tolerate the kinds of things that bring misery to your neighbors and ultimately strip them of their liberties, you're not loving them. And I think that's where you have things like the just war theory. You have things like interposition, where the oppose themselves against the tyrants, and that's what we have with the Constitution. Is we have limits for government powers so that we don't tolerate tyranny either from the outside or from the inside, and that is a very essential Christian virtue, is to not tolerate that type of thing. Now, if you're gonna cuss me out and you're gonna steal my coat, I might love you anyway and give you my shirt too. And in doing that, sometimes people go, their conscience convicts them, and they come back around and go, why do you do that? Why do you live that way? But you come after my kids, or you start stripping away our liberties, or you make my neighbors live in poverty and misery so that you can go live on Epstein Island. No, I think we shouldn't tolerate that.
And that I can't honestly, like, I can't, that sums it up for me, dude. Like I can only view really as most of what's been going on is with just Christians shirking their actual duties and tolerating evil.
Yeah, and I can understand that viewpoint that you have.
Get rid of all these tabs so I'm not destroying my computer. Okay. I mean, that's where I'm at. Like, I don't think any ounce of tolerating this when we know, like, and here's the thing though, too. Like a lot of people struggle with this because they're like, well, like I have a friend who's gay, or like my brother's gay, or like this and this is gay. And like, I understand that it's a hard conversation to have, but it is no reason to shirk your duty of being a Christian, to not do everything. And as he said it too, like, this isn't to go in, and start screaming in these people's faces. He even said, like, I might give you my shirt too, but if you think I'm going to sit here and let you, do these things to kids and do these other stuff in my, in public, no, it's like you've crossed the line. And so that's why he brings up the just war theory, because that is, that does come from Catholic,
What is the
Catholic
just
tradition.
war theory?
So the just war theory was when the Catholics had, I believe it was furthered by St. Augustine, piggybacking off of the writings and teachings of Jesus Christ, which was that Jesus Christ was not a pacifist. Jesus Christ was a nonviolence advocate. There are many, 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 many mentions, between his time speaking with the Roman soldiers, as well as all of the mentionings of the self-defense. And so the just war theory was developed through these teachings because during the Crusades, they had put up with Islamic expansionism for, 400 years, dude, before they finally decided to be like, okay, like, we're going to defend ourselves. And it was because they were so faith-based in their Christianity that they were like struggling to be like, should we do this? Like, how much more of this should we tolerate? Like, we're going to get wiped out if we don't defend ourselves soon. And so it was with St. Augustine, off the back of the teachings of Jesus Christ, which was the just war theory, which the just war theory is, it's like got three main components, right? It's that it's got to be in self-defense, it's got to be righteous, and it has to be proportional to the evils that are being committed against you. And so with that, they got the just war theory developed, and in turn, they began embarking on the Crusades to stop the Islamic expansionism that was wiping out and taking over all these Christian nations. And many people who have no idea what the Crusades are and have no historical perspective just blatantly view them as like, oh, the Crusades were like this offensive strategic. It's like, no, dude. There was the Dark Ages for a reason. Islam had annihilated what was existent upon the Mediterranean Sea. They wiped out the safe waterways. All of a sudden, most of Europe has no access to the rife economy that once existed during the 600 AD period, 500 AD. And so now it's the Dark Ages. They go through this period from around 600 AD up to 1000 AD, where they just are nonstop. They lose all of these territories. I mean, it's like they lose Iberia, they lose North Africa, all of these different territories. They lose Jerusalem of all places. And it wasn't until, I believe it was 1046 or 1086, that Pope Urban Francis II went ahead and decided, hey, like, we're going forward with this. And it was only because the Eastern Christendom, which was mainly Orthodox, had sent a pleading letter to the Western Christendom saying, brothers, we're going to be wiped out if you don't help us. And that was even amidst the schism between Orthodox Christians and Catholic Christians. And so you have all these things going on, and these people are up and decided, like, no, like, we're going to get wiped out. And so the best way to view that in is if you can justify, the U.S. defending Nazi Germany from taking over the world, well, then you can view the Crusades in the same light, which was, in order to defend themselves, they had to go out and attack them at the inception. Like, they had to go out and be strategic. They had to go out and they had to actually, enter into the enemy's country and start doing damage so that they would stop coming into their territories and hurting their own. And so that's the best way to kind of view that.
I understand. I feel like we could go on with this for hours.
I know, we probably
and I
could.
don't know how much longer you wanted to spend on it, but
Well, we want to go to the next. I feel that's probably a good point. And let's say, honestly, anybody who doesn't know what just war theory is or doesn't know about the Crusades, either go back and listen to my defense of the Crusades, or just do a broad search yourself if you want to know more, because there's so much that's been lost in history. Did you want to go to your section? Did you want to go to what you wanted to bring up with the Compassion TED Talk?
Yeah, sure, we can do that. Was the Rising CN, was that something that you wanted to go into, or?
Well, I was going to say we can jump back into that one after we go to your topic. I'm cool with doing that.
Okay. Yeah, let's do it.
So let me go ahead and I'm going to need to. Okay, point it over right here.
Digital agencies.
Sorry for the ads, guys.
Listen up.
Ugh, you don't have YouTube Premium.
Nope. Okay. So you sent me, it was this one. Okay.
So it was 18 seconds, start at 18, and then it'll finish at 53, and then I'll tell you the next segment.
Okay. Did you want to give an opening to this section before we get into it? Because we have it sitting here, it's labeled as compassion culture, and your title to this is canceling cancel culture.
Yeah, so that's actually the title of the video. So just to give a brief intro, how I even saw this actually is that I just have been recently falling asleep listening to TED Talks, and this one had this. Sorry, what'd you say?
That's a good way to sleep.
Yeah, right. I was like, maybe it'll make me smarter in my sleep.
That's funny.
Or I'll wake up extremely liberal one day.
With a big head.
Yeah. So essentially what Betty Hart likes to, or what she's talking about, is cancel culture and the impact that it had on her life. And it's not that someone went out and canceled her. It's that she canceled her dad. So essentially there's three key parts of this video that I wanted to watch, and it kind of gives an idea of what she's going on, and I can elaborate more after we watch the segments.
Okay, so we're doing 18 to 53.
Yes.
I am unabashedly a daddy's girl. My daddy is the first person to have told me that I was beautiful. He often told me that he loved me, and he was one of my favorite people in the entire world, which was why it was really challenging to discover that we had a deep ideological divide that was so sincere and so deep that caused me to not talk to him for 10 years.
Okay, what's the next section? Or did you want to talk about
Yeah,
this section? You tell me.
Yeah, so no. There's not too much to explain there. So yeah, she's just explaining how obviously her, she had a small event and a disagreement with her father that led her to stop talking to him for 10 years. And she kind of gets more into what's going on at 2 minutes and 11 seconds. So this one will go until 2 minutes and 45 seconds.
Till 2:45?
Yep.
Let me tell you two of the premises that exist when we indulge in cancel culture. One, we have to believe that we're right. 100%. No possibility of being wrong. And two, the other person, the person we're going to cancel, clearly does not have the ability to change, to grow, to develop. Obviously, both of these are problematic because sometimes we're not right.
Okay. And what's the next section I'm going to?
Yes. So the next section is 8 minutes and 13 seconds. And then this one will be this is the last one. It's going to go until 9 minutes and 20 seconds.
Got it. Thanks for helping me. I just can't see him on my screen because I'm playing at full screen.
Oh, yeah. It'd be easier this way.
I picked up the phone one day, called him and said, I bet if it were up to you, you'd probably go back in time and change some things. I know I would. But since we can't, how about we start again? And he said, yes, because I love you. I always have, and I always will. I am so grateful that I made that call, because there was no way for me to know that a few years later, my dad would develop Alzheimer's. And a few years after that, he would die. And we never saw eye to eye about the thing that divided us, ever. But our love continued. It continued through those 10 years when we didn't speak, and it continued in the 6 years after.
Okay.
Yeah. So I just want to say, man, Betty Hart just seems like an absolutely pleasant person to be around, and she just seems so cheerful and happy. And I wanted to play that part because you can just hear the true emotion in the speech she's giving, and I think that's what makes this so impactful. She's talking about how she didn't talk to her father for 10 years, all because of a disagreement that they had. She never specifies what it was about.
Right.
She never, it's because that's not the point of it. It doesn't matter what it was about. It was the fact that she reached out to him and was like, maybe our differences don't matter as much as the love that we have for each other. And I think that's where a lot of people forget. And I think that, a lot of people, when they cancel someone, or, and I mean, this is more so for a family member, the people you love.
Right.
When they tell you something you disagree with and you essentially cancel them, which she explains what canceling is in this video as well. It's only 11 and a half minutes. I really recommend watching it if any of you want to.
Yeah, definitely.
But she explains it's like, you essentially, in the public eye, you destroy this person's image and you make sure that they are not heard from again. It's like they are, what does she say? Man, I can't remember. She uses a Latin phrase, but something no grata. I think it's like that. Okay. I can't remember exactly.
It sounds familiar, but I don't know what that is either. No.
Yeah, it's it's essentially like we don't this person doesn't matter anymore. So she explains all that, and she reaches out to him again, and this had been 10 years. I mean, she hadn't talked to him for 10 years. That's insane. And you can just hear the regret in her voice that it took her 10 years to do that. And the important part of this video that also wasn't in here, but it was just because I didn't want to spend too much time on the video. She mentions how people change every 10 years. And that was an important part, because after 10 years, she had realized she probably couldn't even remember what they disagreed on. Or maybe she did, and she realized it didn't matter.
Yeah.
But the important point, because this is something I've seen in my own family, I've seen it with my family's friends, I've seen it with friends, where just because they disagree with someone, they're like, I can't talk to that person anymore. Even though they may have done so much for you, and they may be one of your favorite people to hang out with, and you absolutely just cancel them out of your life, all because you believe you're right and you believe they're wrong. And she mentions planting seeds of change, which you can see that section is called Seeds of Change. She explains how if you are going to change with them, what you need to do, it's compassion means to suffer with someone. So you suffer alongside someone even though you disagree, putting love first before the disagreement. So you go into that conversation, you explain your point, and whether or not they agree with you, it doesn't matter. Because at the very least, you should know that if it all matters to you, you're planting a seed of change in that person. And the moment you give up on them, you get rid of that chance of ever happening. And it also, you're putting your ego in front of your love. And do you want to be a person purely of ego? Or do you want to be a person purely of love? I mean, that's really where you have to decide, and if you feel like you're coming from a place of you'd rather be ego, or maybe you feel like that's not the only two places you can come from, maybe I hope that you change 10 years from now.
Yeah. No, and see, I like the overall message of the video. There are a few things that I don't like about where the video comes from. Not to say it's directly with her message. The only thing, the biggest thing I would say I don't like about the video is she doesn't invoke God whatsoever. I mean, I did watch the whole 11 and a half minutes of this. She doesn't invoke God at all for the reason why you should be these things. In fact, what I dislike about it is it's kind of putting these things in the light where it's like, you have the power. It's incumbent upon you as the person. You and I understand that, like, yes, like, don't ask God for things that man can do. But it's not oriented in anything beyond, like, we just want to be okay. Now, I agree that's better to strive for than, canceling family members. But I also don't like the fact that it's not rooted in anything that's like got a moral compass, just beyond the fact of, like, just be nice because we know we should be like this. But in reality, like, they're inclined to be like that because they probably would agree with many biblical values. And what I thought was funny was in her opening segment, she talks about how canceling culture is, you have to have the belief that you're entirely right and that you're not wrong, and that the person you're canceling is incapable of changing. And and at the end of this, she says that they never furthered the argument. They, in fact, just decided to give up on the argument and choose each other, which I think is good for the families, right? But that her father never changed. That her father clearly was holding the same standpoint that he was at, but they had eventually come to the conclusion that it's better to be loving one another and stand us beside these arguments, rather than let these arguments define our relationship with one another. And that, I think, is the good part of this message. So obviously, I'm not sitting here, saying like, she should be preaching the word of the Lord. I'm just saying, when I watched the video, I was hoping for at some point she would point to the sky and be like, and we want to do these things because we want to honor God. And it was never mentioned. So that was just kind of disappointing on my end. And I'm glad you brought up the seeds of change too, because what made it weird was if you get a bit further into this, she keeps going on these seeds of change. So she talks, I think it's around 10, I believe it's around 10, 11, if I'm correct. She talked about like seeds of diversity.
Seeds of diversity.
What does that have to do with, compassion? Right. Yeah. No, I told you I watched this video.
Some good timing. Yeah.
And I don't know. She gives off a lot to me, a lot of this, like, the amalgous kind of no-faced version of compassion and niceness that has no creed behind it besides like, it's just the right thing to do. And I agree that it's the right thing to do, but I think like there's something that's prescribing that as why it's the right thing to do, Why should we be nice to each other, Beyond just because you should be. And I don't think that she substantiated her argument well enough to include honoring God and honoring a righteous lifestyle.
So what I'll say is I am not sure where Betty Hart stands religious or politically. I can get an idea politically, but because she does use an example of Ruth Bader Ginsburg, and she calls him the late great, calls her the late great, judge.
Yeah.
And so I can draw the conclusion that she's likely liberal, but yes. I obviously like that doesn't matter. Also, probably I align with her more. So
right.
I just think that I'm not sure if TED Talk would even allow you to say anything about God. I don't know. It's very science and logical fact. So I have no idea if she was allowed to.
That's a good point. I didn't think about that.
I've never, in all the TED Talks I've watched, I've never heard anyone bring up God. So I'm not sure. But
I'll have to look into that. I'm sure TED Talk is a liberal or progressive institution. So I would imagine they wouldn't be espousing anything God-like. But it's crazy that if you've been seeing a lot of these and you can't think of anybody invoking God, like that's a little disappointing.
Oh, I've looked for it just to hear the mention of God. Now that's not to say it doesn't ever happen, but I just personally haven't.
Yeah, few and far between.
Yeah. So, but I think that her message matters, and if she was coming from a religious viewpoint and she was like, well, if I just have to not mention God, but the message gets spread, that's her planting her seed of change, and I think that's what matters. And I think that's kind of what I align with Christianity, and that was going to lead into my next question, which was, how would you say this connects to Christianity? Which I can start by saying I think planting that seed of change is exactly what being a Christian is, and I think that's the best way to go about it. You can speak your mind, but even though you may disagree with someone, if you put that aside and you let your love reign first, because inevitably you are the face of God in the eyes of a non-believer. And when you approach someone, you have to portray that love, because that's what God is. He's love. He's wrath at times, in the Old Testament, but that's a certain time. That's not what he becomes. Like us all, things change and we learn.
Well, I mean, I can see two ways about this, though. Like, I can see what you had said, which was, maybe she is Christian. And maybe they did say, like, hey, if you mention God or you try to push this to be a Christian thing, like, we're not going to air your episode. Like, we're going to ask you to come off the stage. Like, just, don't try any of that religious, crap. And maybe that's what she was met with. But here's where I split, and I don't have a strong opinion on this, because I would need someone who is smarter about the word of God than I. Would it be better then for her to deny this opportunity and say no, and in fact make like a viral news story and be like, hey, like, no. You're not going to tell me that I cannot invoke the name of our Lord, our God? Or is it better that she removes his name entirely, brings no attention to God, but instead tries to bring forward the message as best she can without invoking some kind of connection to Christianity. I would personally lean towards she probably should have said, I mean, who knows? Maybe she never even was brought up. Maybe this is a hypothetical. But say it was a hypothetical and it did happen. I would probably lean towards being like, no, like, okay, then I won't speak then. I'd be like, there's no point in me even, saying half of what I say if I can't connect it to God. I don't want people to get the wrong idea with my message. I'm sorry, like I'm out. But I can also see like the James Bond version of what she might possibly be doing, which is like, okay. She's like, okay. And she was like, I'll say everything I have to say and I'll just avoid saying Jesus. And I don't know, maybe you're right. Maybe it's still worthwhile to plant those seeds. I guess it's just like these seeds ultimately may lead somebody to finding Jesus later down the road. It's just like, it's kind of giving them a seed without anywhere to go with it. But I can see both being good though.
Yeah, I get what you're saying. And I know what you mean. Like but the other thought that I had is that maybe this wasn't coming from a Christian viewpoint. And not saying that she isn't Christian, because she could still be Christian and this not come from a Christian viewpoint. But, once people hear her message of this and her love, and they see just the absolute glow that she has, they could be like, maybe I should listen to more of what she has to say. And they find her, she's out there, and she can spread her message of God in a different subject. I just think that what she is targeting right here is more so a societal issue today.
Yeah.
That if we did get rid of this cancel culture and then we just approached it with love, whether she had mentioned God or not, this would inevitably lead more people to be loving and understanding and able to hear that message so much more clearly.
Yeah. It's a step in the right direction. Yeah, I'll give it that. That is definitely a step in the right direction. I guess, you're right about her that too. Like, she's got a glow on her. And maybe it's because it's the makeup and stuff, but like, dude, look at her traps, dude. Her traps are about the same size as mine. Like she's probably pushing weight, dude. Like
she's just like, she just emanates light, like she just seems like one of those people that when she comes in the room, she just glows. And it's surprising to see her and hear her. Nick? No.
Just
it's like, no, it's you see her and you hear her, and you would be surprised to think that she, for somehow, canceled her dad for 10 years, just cut him out of her life. It's shocking to think that. And this actually will lead me into my next question. What do you find as the true reason for canceling people? Do you think that it's a fear of changing your mind, maybe sticking to a herd mentality, or do you think it's like a sense of justice that people are portraying, or something else?
Well, I think canceling happens a bunch of different directions. For the main majority of what cancel culture has been, it has been canceling from the left to attack those on the right. And this comes from the fact that, when you look at these institutions, like none of them lean right at all. They all lean left. From the presidential administration all the way down to Hollywood. Every single one of these leans left. They lean towards being pro-feminist than not. They lean towards being, more pro-LGBTQ than not. They lean more towards being pro-abortion than not. They lean, more towards, and you can go on and on. So canceling has really come down, by the fact that once you get to a certain amount of, saying the incorrect opinion, and by that, I mean, you show enough signs that you are not in lockstep marching with these people on the left, then boom, see ya, you're gone. They're like, what? You don't think it's okay for Shane Dawson to lick a cat, and do sexual things to it? Like, okay, see ya, you white supremacist. And it's like, what? And that's the level of like canceling that like that has come about, you know. It's mainly goes one way. Now here lately, with the last couple of years, it's been getting a lot better. Now that comes largely by the fact that you have a single billionaire who decided to buy a social media platform. And it was really honestly the only reason why we have any amount of ability to freely fight back or push back against this. And I would imagine you could probably line up with Twitter being bought by Elon Musk with the fact that the right began canceling from the right onto the left. Now, it doesn't happen nearly at all. And in fact, if it does, it's almost exclusively only on social media. The right really has no power to exclude people from institutions outside of maybe their private organizations. But what do you find is the true reason of canceling? I mean, if I was to say the true reason of canceling, it would be of two reasons. One, the first being that the average person who cancels someone only does so because they're misled. They're entirely, as you would put it, sticking to this herd mentality that they see all these opinions of the people around them and they go, okay, I'm with them. I would rather be with them than with you. Like, look at this guy. He's getting ratioed. He's getting all these negative comments. Look at all these different accounts talking about this guy. Like, okay, I want to be with them, not with you. And the second reason, I would argue that the true reason for canceling people, when it comes to like censoring opinions, when it comes to like these platforms, like nuking accounts, banning people, that's because they fear free speech. That comes from the pure ideology of it can't exist because their ideas, when in the free market of ideas, will not be able to compete with the ideas they're canceling. And so canceling is a mechanism in which to eliminate those ideas which dominate yours. So if you're intent on encouraging people to live in, as Sovereign Broad put it, this global homo world where we all kill, babies to the tune of 60 million a year, I think it's more than that, then you couldn't have these very well and affluent Christian conservatives constantly giving their opinions, because they view those opinions in the free market of ideas as ones that would dominate theirs. So the only way that they can actually get their ideas to take the forefront in the battlefield of ideas is to ensure that the other ideas can never be heard and can't even exist in the same platform as them. That would be what
do you know who popularized cancel culture?
That
would be Hitler. I mean, that guy really, he perfected it. I mean, that's not to say that, if you cancel someone that you agree with Hitler, but it is a method that he used to control his population. So you have to think, when you are doing that, for one, it's entirely against American values. And if you feel like you're of that belief, like, I don't care about America and our values are wrong, well, this country has changed so much and gotten so much better over the 200 plus years of its existence that, sorry.
You're good.
Yeah, over the 200 plus years of its existence, it has gotten so much better purely because of those values. Purely because we've stuck to them and we've grown, and we use the ability to vote, and it's something that with time it changes. It's something that we can't lose. And it's when you cancel people, in reality, and like what I would say, I agree with you. I think that it's sticking to a herd mentality. I think that that's something I was worried about myself doing when I had first thought to drop out of the podcast. That I was sticking to a herd mentality. I was letting someone else make a decision for me that hadn't happened yet.
Because, and you would say out of the fear of being associated with me, like you didn't want to be seen as one of those guys,
Yeah, I had a lot to do with that. It was like, and I know you don't take offense to it. It was just like, yeah, we're not completely aligned. So it's like being associated might put me in this bad light. But I'm like, you know what? I've never cared about the opinions of people I don't love enough to not say them anyway. It's like, I don't care enough about your opinion to lie to you.
Right.
Not you. I'm just saying, like, anyone.
That mentality.
Anyone that would give me or make me feel like call me a racist or homophobic or anything like that. Okay, well, we're done. Anyone that would call me that, the only reason I would care to defend myself is if you were someone I loved and someone that I respected, because I know that if you were someone I love and respect, that you know me and you know that's not who I am. And I think that it really aligns with caring more about compassion than it is about canceling someone. If you don't agree with them, not hearing them out, when you don't know what the other side has to say, how can you truly say that your reason is not someone else's? If you are not hearing the other side, that's what I'm trying to get across. It's like you don't listen to the other side, so how can you have a foundation of what you disagree with? Exactly. Because if I give you a devil's advocate question and I ask you, why, like, let me give you an example the other direction. And instead of you giving me a response, you get angry and you say, like, that's stupid. Like, I don't want to hear that. I'm just not going to listen to you. To me, that tells me that your viewpoint is not your own. And you took it from whatever media or someone close to you that gave you that opinion.
Yeah, like you don't have the mastery of the idea to be able to substantiate it yourself. So you default to, okay, well, I'm done talking to you then.
Exactly, because you haven't researched enough. You haven't seen what you even disagree with. You haven't listened to what you disagree with enough to draw your own conclusion.
Definitely. And I mean, like, I think most people were in that boat that you were just in before you decided to come back on the podcast. I think most people have been conditioned like this. And this is honestly a beautiful segue into the apathetic normies. And this is what I kind of harp on a lot too, dude, which is like, I don't really see any rightful changing ever going to occur as long as people carry that mentality, which is, someone else will do it. Someone else will take care of it. Like, I don't want to be out there, don't call me a racist. Just have someone else take care of it. And that's why I think, like, the rubber's going to meet the road at some point. And I say that because I have this video here. It's a clip from Nick Freitas. It's 2 minutes long, so it'll be like about the longest thing we play today. It's Nick Freitas. If you're familiar with him, you've probably seen him on Timcast before. He's been, he's done a bunch of different things. He's a Green Beret combat veteran, and he's a delegate for Virginia. He's Republican. And I think this is it's super relevant, especially now. And this all ties into cancel culture. And I think this is where Nick Freitas, this is like at the end point of America's version of cancel culture. And I go back to that point where you had talked about Hitler, like, he didn't perfect cancel culture well enough because, he's 6 feet under, his movement didn't last very long afterwards, right?
I mean, it was enough to impact that country and
it was
change so many people's minds.
Well, I was only going to go to the point where I think America has perfected it even further than what, ever Hitler was ever doing, especially when you have the mechanisms of social media. You have the deep state who can go, we had the Twitter files not too long ago where the deep state comes in and they're like, oh yeah, you want to send us these accounts and these accounts. And actually, like, what accounts have been talking about this news story here lately? Yeah, we're going to need to look into that, man. And it's like, okay, well then, yeah, those mechanisms are going to be way, way, way more effective. And they're behind the scenes and on the back end compared to like literal book burnings, destroying libraries, because those things are out in the public. So the populace can see that their history is being destroyed. Where in the online, the digital arena, it's like, it's a lot harder to combat. Because if an account got deleted that you used to follow, and then, one day you just realize you didn't see it again, Well, then it might take you a long time before you ever figured out that that account you followed was deleted for saying the wrong opinion. And so that's why I bring it here to Nick Freitas, because the Trash Discourse has this quote here that he says at the caption here. And he says exactly right. People have been conditioned to not discuss politics at the dinner table. Yet the only people self-censoring are the ones who are speaking the truth. It's time to knock that off. And so I want to go ahead and play this, everybody. Make sure the sound is okay. All right, let her rip.
I'm tired of feeling like a hostage in my own country. I was talking with somebody, really nice guy, and we're talking on the plane, and he's getting excited as he's talking about the missionary work he does. And I remember, like, I even had this almost tinge like, oh, I wonder if anybody's getting offended by us talking. And then I stopped myself. I'm like, no. He's talking about raising his kids, and he's talking about going out and preaching, and he's talking about speaking hope into people's lives and the sacrifices that they made and where he's come from, because he'd gone through a lot to get to that point. He has every right to be excited about what he's talking about. And I got every right to be excited for what he's talking about. And I am tired of parents and people in general, free people, what are supposed to be free people, upset because, well, you know, we're not allowed to talk about politics or religion. I don't want to be accused of being a bigot. I get told this by the same people that want to look at me with a huge level of righteous indignation. How dare you want school choice? You must hate poor kids. As if I don't want it for poor kids. And then those same people get up and sit there and justify why there needs to be pornography in a school, or why that kid needs to get puberty blockers at 10 years old, or why that kid needs to be carved up, or that kid needs to be aborted at month 9. And I'm the bad guy? No, I'm sorry. Only in clown world is that the bad guy. And the only reason I believe it's been allowed to continue to this degree, because there hasn't been enough men in society. Not that I don't want women to stand up too, but there hasn't been enough men in society to stand up and be like, slow your roll. Because let's face it, at the end of the day, this power that they're projecting, where does it come from? I don't see any one of these people that poses a physical threat to me. Absolutely not.
Yeah.
You want to go down that road? I will show you what a bad idea it was. But because of their influence within institutions we've all been taught to respect, that's where the power and authority comes from. It is illusory. And we're going to see how much of an illusion it actually was when men start standing up and going, no, not in my house, not in my community, not in my state, not in my country. You're free to live the way you want. The moment you try to impose that on me, you got something else coming.
And
that guy is that guy's like, you can just tell he's military.
Can you say it any better than that though? Like, I mean, that's crazy,
and
man.
I know, as much, like, even if I had something to disagree with there, I watched that video and I was like, yeah, no, he's completely right. It's a shame that people are censoring themselves,
and
just to go ahead. Yeah, I know you wanted to elaborate on it.
Well, no, I hate to cut you off. But I wanted to.
No, you weren't.
I wanted to tie this back in with, like, this is why I have become much more like, okay, like, I'm going to do this. Like, I don't care how badly I get shadow banned, dude. Because to me, it is like, forgive me, I'm shaking everything. I can't, even my wife will admit to this, dude. Like, sometimes I will just, like, squeezing my hand so intensely because I've witnessed, like, something that's just so clown world, like you put it. Like, it is so, like, how did we get to this point? And the only people I can be mad at are the men who didn't stand up before me. Like, what was our previous generations doing? Like, are you serious? Like, live and let live? Have you seen what this has gotten to us? Like, the slippery slope's not real. Bro, we passed homosexual marriage in 2010, and now we have kids cutting their penises off. Like, it's been, 15 years. And it was like, that whole time you're told by the institutions, you're told by all these people that are in the higher ups, like, no, that's not real. All these people who espouse these ideas, like, they just hate you. They just hate that you want to be like those things. And so that comes along with the cancel culture, because it comes with the dichotomy that the ones who are canceling are good and the ones who are getting canceled are evil. And so then it develops back into a biblical framework, again, antithetical to all of it, because God doesn't exist among these people, but it's a religion to them. And so it becomes like, yeah, if they see their friend who's liking these posts of that guy they know is a Christian, or that guy they know is like, he's against abortion entirely, they get canceled else immediately because it's a religion to them. It's like, you can't for one value be slightly disaligned than what the most progressive people are doing, or otherwise then you're going to get othered and you're gone. And especially what he was saying about like imposing it on kids, that's exactly where we are now. Like, we're at the point now where almost all of these different policies, these different pushes, are them being like, okay, we are going to now impose it upon you guys. And if you don't like it, you're the bad guy. And it's like, dude, if there's any time for men to stand up, it's now. Like, if you haven't heard the call, I'm sorry, dude, but your testosterone levels must be lower than the Try Guys. Because then you even felt it too, Nick. You're like, you felt it, like it speaks to you where you're like, no, you know what, honestly, like there is too much garbage here. Like, I can't sit here as, you know, a 28-year-old or 27-year-old and take this. And that's why I said, even think about the founding fathers who were younger than you and I, who built this country with their ideals. And they were like 24 and 25 years old. And then I sit and I think, what a weak coward I must be to not constantly wear my faith and wear my opinion when I believe it to be right and hold it so true. And I shirk from the ability or my responsibilities to be like, no, this isn't right. I shirk from being in my community and I'm like, not a force for good. And then it just makes you be like, man, but why isn't more men doing this? And it feels like, yeah, we've been conditioned, you know, it's better. And that's why I find the disagreements in the compassion video, because I don't like this whole message of like, well, just be tolerant and let people do what they want, because I just disagree vehemently with that. But I've talked a bit. I want to hear what you thought about that.
Yeah. So, you know, in high school, I just want to say that I do understand it. And I think you come from a viewpoint that's a little bit more physical than and maybe I'm just getting the wrong idea. But like, I it's not something when I hear a viewpoint, it just doesn't get me, I'll say it gets me upset, but it's not like, man, I want to go, kick this guy's ass. Like,
okay, well,
but
take it to pedophilia though, right? Like, so you were saying,
well,
like,
yeah.
Do you think there's an idea that you would cancel? I mean, like, yes, like I would cancel pedophilia outright. I don't think that there's any way that you could sell that to me or any community or populace of people, and they would be like, oh, that's okay. And I would imagine, and I would argue for on your end, correct me if I'm wrong, but if you found out that someone did something pedophilic with your child, I would imagine your first instinct would be like, where is this dude?
Yeah, there's no doubt about that.
Right.
And I think it is different for personal reasons. It's something even my dad used to say. What is it? Republicans are liberal when it comes to their own families, and Democrats are conservative when it comes to their own money. It's like,
that's kind of
your viewpoint.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's a great. I love that saying, because it also brought me to the realization that both those parties are really no different from each other.
Well, again, I agree with that. Let it be said, like, I am no fan of generally almost any Republicans, and I'm definitely no fan of Democrats. Like, it is the uniparty establishment, dude. And that's really where, like, a lot of this crux of these issues come in, where that's why I began doing a lot of what I was doing, because, like, I don't see any Republican outside of the few and far between, like the Matt Gaetz and the Rand Pauls of the world, that I go, yeah, man, he's representing what I believe. Because it's like every single one of them is doing some backwards policy, or they're a warmonger, or they completely renege on their ideas, and they go back and they're like, oh yeah, actually, like, I am kind of for abortion. And you're like, dude,
yeah,
the only reason why
or they're a millionaire.
Yes, or then you find out they're getting money through some kind of lobbying, and it's just like, it's so slimy, dude. And it's part of the reason why I also would be like, I would never entertain the idea of going into that, dude. Like, for one, I would probably be the person who dies. Like, they'd be like, man, dude, his car went 180 miles an hour and he hit the wall. Like, that would just be me, because I would never be able to be like, oh yeah, dude, like, let me shake your slimy hand and take your money and sacrifice everything I believe in. Because it just ain't me. I just don't care about money. I'm not like that. You can't make me care about it. And so that's why I avoid that kind of stuff, because it's like, dude, I know they would be like, oh man, get this dude out of here. They slide the picture, Tim Pool says this all the time. They slide a picture of JFK across the table and they just like wink and nod at me. Like, I'd be like, bro, bring it, bring it. I'd rip a picture out. Be like, bring it, dude. I'd be like,
it reminds me of like Bernie Sanders, for instance. Whether you wanted him or not, you could see as soon as he publicly started going out and saying like, yeah, lobbying's ridiculous. These people receiving money during, like millions of dollars for their campaigns.
Yeah.
It's like, it's all funded by corporations. He's like, we got to get rid of that. And we gotta start looking into politicians and what they're doing, like what's going on behind the scenes. And then you could just see the shift where it was like, oh, this guy isn't who he thought he was. Like, this guy's not going to be a sheep. And that's really what I feel like Biden has become. And I feel like that's why he got elected, is they're like, oh, here's a guy that we can put in office and he'll just do whatever we say. Because like, if you don't believe that, look at clips of him.
Dude, it's so bad. Like,
yeah. Like, he's so anti everything he is now.
Well, here's the thing, though.
20 years ago.
I mean, I'm not even worried about the flip-flopping, with him entirely being starkly contrasting any value he was proposing back in 1995. But the fact is that it's the same logic, right? We need somebody who we can use as a tool. But instead of finding somebody who has no morals, they found somebody who has no morals and is almost dead. So when you combine those two together and you're like, man, this guy literally has no idea where he's at, and we can prop him up like Weekend at Bernie's, and we can do all this stuff behind the scenes, and everybody will blame the sad old man. And that's really what the situation has become, is you have all of the deep state, the handlers, everybody who is all these unelected officials who exist and are rife in the government that have been there for 10, 15 years, are now completely running the country because the guy who's supposed to be doing it is comatose, bro. He's like, in the red and green states. What?
That's why it's like, if you're, I'm of the firm belief, whether it is the Illuminati or something, I'm not saying there's some huge conspiracy behind it, because it's not really conspiracy when you look at it and you're like, someone is behind the curtain, like running things, because everyone always assumes like, oh, well, all we need to do is get the right guy in office. And it's like, as soon as you get the right guy in office, like, they're not going to be able to make any changes. And you're going to be hard pressed to find the right guy in office, because someone is going to prevent that from happening.
But that was the argument with Trump. Evident. That was the argument with Trump. I mean, people most particularly point to the fact that when he had requested to pull troops out of Syria, he was lied to. They told him that they had pulled the troops from Syria, only for him to later find out that they had kept a couple hundred to remain in Syria. Can you imagine? A president, the executive commander-in-chief, gave a direct order to pull troops out of an area, and they denied him. They went around him, they circumvented him, and it's all of these deep state handlers. It's these people.
It's like treasonous.
It is treasonous. It's these unnamed people. Like, we have nobody to even point to, because they're unelected officials. They're like these bureaucrat corporate people who just slam their hands up with money, and they take like these assistant jobs, these administrator positions, production assistant affiliate positions, like all these crazy nonsensical jobs that really all they do is handle back end work for Biden, which has now essentially turned into the fact that they are essentially running the country, and the president has to fight against them. Or in Biden's case, he's just letting them do whatever they want. But in Trump's case, it was him actively having to fire people, rehire all these people, make all these staffing changes, because he's fighting an internal battle with these people in there who are like very intent on destroying the country because they do have an agenda. And it more commonly falls in the communist Marxist region of the ideas they're trying to push forward. And it's just depressing when you think about it like that, because then you do go to the physical aspect where, like, Man, can you imagine if any more of the curtain starts to get pulled back while we have the border crisis going on? Like, it's coming to the point where, dude, like, normies won't be apathetic anymore. Because how many times a day can they listen to the fact that, you know, illegal immigrants get paid more per day in benefits than the average Vietnam veteran? Or how many times can they see that, you know, immigrants are being handed $3,000 as they come over and are being given free housing, free food, free electronics, free phones, while the average person is living paycheck to paycheck? And
yeah,
it's like,
and if you genuinely can sit there and think that a politician accepting lobbying money, any corporate entity that even backs it, that sits there with billions of dollars, if you can really think that they are doing that for a good-hearted reason, you really have to reevaluate why. Like, you have to think about that. What is it? It's if you want to know where the evil lies, follow the money. I mean, it's the truth.
Dude, honestly, like, there's honestly really no greater way to understand politics than to simply follow the money. Follow those accounts. What's his name? Forgive me, I'm going to mess this up. I think his name is Ian Carroll. He does a lot of those TikTok videos where essentially his entire investigative reporting is the fact that he follows the money. He does really good work. I mean, honestly, because we're shouting him out, I'm going to pull his page up for everybody. I think it's Ian Carroll. Yeah, here it is. This dude makes these posts all the time if you're not familiar with him. He's like almost like, 240,000 followers. He's a really, really good follow. Like his pinned video from here is talking about Epstein and Mossad and Israel, as well as, what ties in with the Biden family. Like his newest one is about Biden and the Russian and Chinese influence. Like he's really good account to follow, especially if you want some specifics
I like how
about that.
His two top videos are
Biden and
both
Biden.
Well, it was like both opposing though. It looks like both are opposing both parties.
Yeah, so this is against Israel and the Biden family, and this is against Biden was actively involved. I think they're both just Biden relative. But yeah, I mean, when you're following the money, you are going to be against both parties. It's just going to naturally happen. I mean, if you're still under the illusion that the Republican Party, I see this as a right winger myself, that the Republican Party has your values in mind when they make these decisions, I'm sorry to tell you, like, no, like, in fact, I think the new right has been doing really good in primarying these people out of there, getting these incumbents who have been taking these poor positions, who continually sell out to the American people. I mean, you got to think, dude, like we were barely able to get Alexandros Mayorkas impeached, and he had the most bulletproof shut case of committing treason against the country, or at least shirking his duty to monitor the border and lying repeatedly on stand to Congress, like, and they barely got him impeached, dude, like by 3 votes. And it only goes to show you that, like, the individual's interest, the community's interest, your state's interest, your religious interest are not at all represented by the people you think that they will. And it's just a sad fact of reality, which it calls into what we make this entire mission about, which is you have to be more involved. You have to start paying attention. I say this often, vigilance, and I don't remember who the original quote is, so attribute it to whoever the correct person is. Vigilance is the price of everlasting freedom. You must be aware at all times.
That was the exact quote that you said in that video that made me reevaluate things. And that was like when you had said that exact quote, vigilance. I already forgot it, but
vigilance is the price of freedom.
Yeah, vigilance is the price of freedom. Yeah, that quote really just has so much to say, and I think that most people have to find themselves agreeing with that. It is the price of freedom. If you want to have your rights and your values, you have to fight for them.
I mean, you can even tie that into the fact of how the Constitution was written. I mean, they understood that, like, it was going to be nearly instant that, some tyrant was going to probably try to make rise out of their government. That's why so much of the Bill of Rights and what's written down through the Constitution is meant to protect the people. because they had a good understanding that like it doesn't even take very long for these systems to be, you know, corrupted by evil. So their entire, I mean, the Bill of Rights, it's very ever present throughout all of their writings. It's like a constant reminder to people. That's why you have the Second Amendment. That's why you have the First Amendment. You must utilize them. You must be vigilant because evil is always on the doorstep. And I think it's really even easier for Christians to understand because, you know, we come with the belief that humans are born in sin and we're born in a fallen world. This world is a world of fallen man. And so it would make sense that evil is literally knocking at every single doorstep nonstop all the time, waiting for its opportunity to come in. And so it goes without saying, you know, vigilance is the price of freedom. This means then that it requires you must be the watchman of it. You must protect it, you know, especially if you understand when things have good value. You know, you don't park your nice car and leave it unlocked on the street, now do you? No, you make sure it's protected. You go a few extra steps to ensure that you protect it as best you can, right? You're being vigilant about the way you are going to carry the value of your car. And you can apply that you can take that to women, right? You could take that to a bunch of different places. But the idea is if you know something is good and it is of value, you know that by nature of evil, someone is going to want to take that from you. And therein lies the fact that vigilance is the price of freedom, because no people don't want you free. They want you subjugated. They want you oppressed. They want you mining cobalt with your teeth falling out so they can sell Nike shoes, because most people's, when their moral compass is not based in Christianity, it is based in some loose understanding of what it is to claim power. And all of those people generally fall under the guise of essentially being evil. And we're getting to the end point. I know we're almost at the second hour mark. So with 8 minutes being left, I did want to say thank you to everybody who's watching right now. I didn't realize we're almost at 50 live viewers. This is actually pretty sick. It's probably the best one we've done so far. So with that being said, you know, make sure you follow the show on Spotify, follow me on YouTube, definitely follow me on X. I would love to have you, keep you around. I mean, we can do this pretty often. But let me go ahead and bring this back to the misgendering policy, and it goes along with the cancel culture. It goes along with everything we have been saying, apathetic normies, everything. So if you weren't aware, Nick, I don't know if you had went through this part of the slide.
Yeah, I did.
Well, so Twitter 1.0, which everybody, you know, commonly refers to it as that because it was the version of Twitter that existed before Elon Musk had bought it, had very harsh penalties for you misgendering somebody. And by that means, essentially, if you did not acknowledge, if you did not acknowledge somebody's preferred pronouns, then you were committing a hateful act, or your tweet would be listed under hateful conduct. And so I have the screenshot here, but it's just a screenshot from Tim Pool, which he says, you know, hateful conduct, X is the woke mind virus. I hope this gets resolved. And Elon Musk said he was fixing it. As far as I know, it's not been fixed to this point. It's still what's the word? It's still clamping people down, throttling accounts, censoring them. And that's even gotten stretched to the word noticing is now being included in this. And so again, it just shows even once you expect with this guy taking over, even at this point, it's still happening. There's still bad actors, even in this company, right? Like Elon Musk laid off how many people? But even outside of laying off all those people, somehow out of the 30 people that remain, there's still somebody there attempting to ensure that they push this agenda, which is the LGBTQ agenda, which is allowing people to live in this delusional reality. And then in fact, turning and limiting your views, your tweets, and your messaging for saying what you say, when it's clear that it's so left biased, right? Nobody on the right is going to sit there and be like, dude, I'm not saying your pronouns, dude. I don't agree with that. I don't believe that. And so to enforce such a left-handed bias, rule this late into claiming on Twitter was just a huge disheartening moment, which is dude, now we got to fight Elon. It's bro, I thought we were bros, dude, and it's just dang, it happened. It's everywhere, but maybe it's by proxy if you have to follow the money. And I say that because you have the ADL and, forgive me, I forget the other one, but big organizations threatening to pull all of this advertising from Elon, and maybe it is him kind of walking things a bit back because he wants to bring the money back in. And maybe that's really all it is about for a lot of these people, is just like they want money. And so it's sad, and it just goes to show again, like, and Tim says this here at the end, I will say this, the caveat, which is, I should always wait because you do always seem to do the right thing or try your best. Massive respect. So we can hope that this policy gets reverted and it gets changed and they do away with it and we never have to hear about it again. But with that being said, it's just, again, you have to be active. You have to ensure that you are paying attention. And it's more so important that you're paying attention to locals. But I mean, with that being said, Nick, was there something that you wanted to bring attention to in a closing statement before we sign off?
No, I guess I'll say one more thing for this last part. I find it like a conundrum because when it comes to social media, I'm like, man, I'd rather just not even be on there. I just want to delete my account.
Mm-hmm.
But also I find, social media is how I keep up to date on what's going on with my family, and also really like common events that are happening. And it's like whether the news is biased or not, it's still a way to hear about it, and when you hear about it you can do your own evaluation by like digging into it more. But it's difficult, and it is a shame to see that like people's posts are getting snubbed. And I think that when it comes to gender roles, it's something that you should try to make an effort to, if it's not like an overbearing amount of, I have long hair, so when I go into just a restaurant in general, and I've had it happen a few times actually. Even though I have a very manly figure, I've had people be like, I've had people be like, yeah, ma'am, what can I get for you? And then they look at me with like absolute fear, and then I'm like, oh, it's all good. Yeah, let me just, and I like it completely, because it doesn't matter to me.
Wait.
I don't know why if you're making it matter to you, you've made it too much about your ego. And it is not about your message. It's like it's not about you being accepting, because that's not what it is. It's you wanting to feel like you're different than people, and you're pushing it so hard that you have to get upset. And it's getting upset is a way for you to show people that's who you are. It's like, oh, you didn't know? Well, thank God you said something, because now I get to explain who I am. And it's like people are so egotistical about what they are and what they believe.
It's like your entire personality is transgender Karen. Like that's probably like one of the worst things that you could be.
It's like just you can be that. Just like stop making it like an ego thing. If it slips up and happens, okay, sorry. But you don't have to get mad at people for it.
But that's when I would argue it's because it's a mental illness, and like that's why they need the affirmation from everyday people who have no idea who they are, from random strangers. It's because it is to them, it is like you must, right? It's because it's like they're literally battling a mental illness, and so that's why they demand that it's constantly verified by everybody, because it helps them kind of become numb to the idea in their own head that it is a mental illness, And so that's why I think so many of them are seen like egotistical, like what you're saying, is because they must be affirmed in those moments. Otherwise you have wronged them deeply. And that's why they vote.
Yeah, I think it's just, at least how I feel is I think people, and I know most everyone agrees, that it's just people seeking to be the victim. It's a way to get attention. It's an attention grab. Now, I'm not saying that just because you are transgender or you're just any certain belief that is publicly made, that you are only that for attention. But that's why it's so popular right now. That's why it's like a fad to be something. Just to openly disagree so that people can recognize like, oh, oh my gosh, I had no idea you were oppressed. Like,
Yeah.
you know, like what? It's like get over it. Like, well, when are we gonna stop?
It's so tired now. Who isn't oppressed at this point, dude? You know, like
and I
always
heard there was this comparison, and it's like, two twins born to the same family. They both have the same life. And, it was terrible. It was a terrible life. They both are raised in this awful household. And they both get older. One becomes really successful, and the other becomes extremely poor. And I bet you can already guess where I'm going with it.
Yep.
The extremely poor person uses everything that happened as an excuse as to why they can't get ahead.
Exactly.
And then the very rich person uses it as something to motivate themselves. And that's how you really can tell when someone is actually oppressed, is because they don't sit there and cry about it.
Yep.
They use it as motivation to go out there and better themselves. That's something so many people can learn from.
Dude, it's a great way to put it. And honestly, a great way to end the show. And it's honestly, this is the closest we've ever been to being accurately on time, too. It's 9:01. Again, I do want to say thank you to everybody who is out in the audience. I think I see we have got like 60 people in here. I can't see any live chats right now, so if you're talking crap or you're praising us, I can't see it, but I appreciate it either way it goes. I did want to go ahead and point you to this. I will be backloading everything to my YouTube channel as long as it exists. So at Atlas Thugged, you can see some of these later ones here. I have a bunch of individual videos as well, but I'm backloading the podcast here. There's multiple variations. The Real-Time Red Pill podcast is dead. Only look at that if you want to see some of the older stuff I have. But I have OAD and Offensively Accurate. What this is right now is Offensively Accurate. And then my solo show is the Offensively Accurate Daily. Offensively Accurate has been around a bit longer. I don't have the earlier versions up. Those you can find on Spotify. So if you did want to see those episodes, find us on Spotify, follow us there. Share the show with your friends. I'm going to copy the Tim Pool method of saying all this, but we really do appreciate your support. And then, thank you for coming on, Nick. A huge thank you for, especially the split that we had. And, I know your parents probably, maybe not even enjoying the fact that you're on right now. And so with that, I want to say, I'm glad that, my message got across to you. I'm glad that you wanted to pick up your sword and rejoin the battle. And so I can't thank you enough. I think you're a huge, you're an inspiration to me to keep going and show that I like what I'm saying means something. And I think you're a huge inspiration to those who might be second guessing themselves. And so, I just want to say like a big thank you for that, man.
No, thank you. And I'll do a closing statement here as well. Thank you for accepting me back on. What I will let you know is that it wasn't really what, my parents had told me to do. It was more so like, oh, you should evaluate this. And it was something I was just like, well, maybe I should just cut all ties. So, It wasn't like they don't hate you. Yeah. Okay. So just so you're aware. Not yet. I really do want to thank you for even after hearing everything you've heard and, what people say at you, to keep going with your message. Because even though I watched a video where I was listening to it and I was thinking, God, I wish I could disagree with this guy right now. The message got to me. And that was because, I will never let a piece of media offend me so much from not listening to it. I will still hear it all because that's going to help me with my own point. And
yes, sir.
I just want to thank you for, having me back on.
Of course,
I really appreciate you.
That's the point. Iron sharpens iron, dude. And the longer we spar, my hope is that I can convince you and pull you to my side. The longer we do this, maybe your hope is to maybe kind of maybe soften my armor and shield. Either way, though, I think it's great that we kind of constantly kind of spar these ideas back and forth. And I think a lot of the times too, like I have previous listeners who kind of give me the thoughts and the ideas, like you kind of bring on a lot of perspectives that they might not be thinking, because you got to imagine maybe people who might be follow me probably because they do agree with me, if not almost entirely. I mean, there might be some small differences. And so when having someone on like you on lets them get a nice breath of like opposition or someone who's not entirely aligned with what I am. And so I think that's just great for discussion, especially because we can do this and not scream at each other. Maybe we can say that for the future, but we're not screaming now. So,
No, I have no I thought or feeling to do that.
no.
I think it's like I'm just happy that we can, like you said, have this conversation and vocalize our opinions without yelling at each other. That makes such a huge difference.
No, 100%. And again, listen, thank everybody who tuned in tonight. We appreciate that very much. And Christ is King. Do never forget that. God bless. I appreciate everybody. Take care and have a good night.